Good evening, welcome back. Coming at you a little bit later than normal tonight. We were over watching the rip over on Danny and Gray's Cards and Toys. He had a 5 blaster random blaster box rip tonight, so we were over there checking that out, participating, and so on and so forth. So for your birthdays today on June 2nd, 2023, this Friday, we got birthdays and only a couple of events. I scoured over the events forward and backward. Really, the only 2 events that I've seen of note: 1985, Terry Labonte on this date won at Riverside, California for his next to last win for Billy Hagan, as well as the next to last win for Billy Hagan's team. And probably the more significant part of this win, it was Terry's only win in 1985 as defending Cup Series champion. And this is when, if you listen to podcasts that Terry Labonte was on, they really start talking about this is, really near the end of '84, the year they won the championship. The foundation was really crumbling at Hagan's team. So the defending champion only won one race and finished, I believe he was 7th or 8th or 9th in points. He was really low in the top 10 in points. The year started off great, really consistent, and then after midway, they just fell off a cliff and went downhill fast. Also on this date in 1991 at Dover, Ken Schrader won his 4th and final career Cup Series race. And you look at it, Ken Schrader's Cup career full-time started in 1985. By 1991, and about the 12th race of the season, 6 years in, he's done winning. And he races full-time pretty much all the way 2005, 2006, that time frame. So think about that. He went from early 91 to the end of his career without another... Went through the entire 90s, the rest of the 90s, and then the early part of the 2000s without a win. So from 88 to 91, Schrader wins 4 races in that time span, and he's done winning. Not from a lack of trying, just a lot of bad luck. If you go back, Ken Schrader was leading a lot of races late, and usually that 25 car broke. So anyway, a couple birthdays to celebrate here today. Born on this date in 1994, current part-time Truck Series driver Tyler Hill. Then we have a couple of pretty famous names here. Born on this date in 1954. He did try to run for Cup Series Rookie of the Year back in 1995 in a very, very awful failed attempt, but he is king of the Outlaws, Mr. Steve Kinser. So most of his cards here are going to just be with the Quaker State livery. This was a project that failed miserably, sad to say. I just don't think Steve could ever get a hold or get the hang of the Cup Series cars. There's a look at one of his World Outlaws cars. Of course, this has got Valvoline sponsorship, so they blurred it out because obviously at the time he's a Quaker State driver for the Cup car. And he only ran 5 races in 95. I think he DNQ'd a couple times, but just about every race he was in a crash or had some kind of just odd mechanical failure. And this was the first year that they did that little striping with the Q. I believe they might have done it with Brett's car in 94. I don't recall. But I don't know if you want to call it a publicity stunt to bring Kinser in, but it just didn't work. He just never grasped stock cars. I think one thing, when he won the IROC race at Talladega in 1994, everybody's like, oh, that's the next big thing there. You guys need to grab him. And unfortunately, it did not work out. Much respect to Steve Kinser, mad respect to Steve Kinser for all his accomplishments in the dirt world, but unfortunately, it didn't transition over to NASCAR. And so we go from the king of the Outlaws to the son of the king, Kyle Petty, born on this date in 1960. So we've actually got Kyle's cards lined up chronologically since all of Steve's were basically in 95. Of course, in 1990 here, this is 91 card, but in 1990 he won at Rockingham, driving the Peak car. Then he switched to Mellow Yellow, very iconic paint scheme there. So we'll look at some stuff. And one thing that I always liked with his Peak, with his Mellow Yellow outfit, his Winston patch was always had green stripes around it, so I always thought that was kind of cool. When he won in Pocono in 93, he gets out of the car with a camcorder recording the Victory Lane celebration. 95, 96, he has Coors Light Hop on board. There's a nice look. His 95 premiums I thought were really nice looking cards. Then he hops over to Hot Wheels. I didn't dig out a lot of the Hot Wheels cards because there was just not really any good ones with his uniform. He took over the Sprint car after Adam was killed in New Hampshire in 2000. And some of the other sponsors they had, Georgia Pacific, so here it's National Tire and Battery, and Wells Fargo, to name a few. So we got some pretty cool cars here. The Peak car, and this was painted up very similar to his dad's STP car. The colors are different, but the paint scheme is very similar. There's that iconic mellow yellow car. The Pontiac. So I just, and that's one that's always been nicely done with throwbacks. I think Kyle Larson did one a few years ago. It's based off the Days of Thunder paint scheme. Coors Light had a few different paint schemes. They actually started off silver like this on the hood, but they didn't like the way it showed up on the TV camera, so they changed it to the blue and white. So again, very, very similar colors to the Peak car. Then they kind of changed it, have a gradient there in the number, and almost a swoosh style with that that band or the ribbon going from the front to the back there. Nicely done. When he switched to Hot Wheels, got a couple different versions here. He did run a special paint scheme for the Blues Brothers 2000. And then another one that had a ribbon that just went up one side instead of looping around the numbers. Nicely done. This is the only one that I could find of the Sprint PCS car. And then the last one we have has a couple cars, Coke Zero and Marathon American Spirit. So a lot of nice iconic paint jobs there. Of course, Kyle has 8 wins in the Cup Series, I believe it is. Didn't really, I don't want to say he had a bad career, but he left Petty Enterprises in 1985, or he left at the end of 84 into 85. And, you know, I think he struggled at Petty Enterprises because they were running 2 cars with one sponsor. They didn't get extra money from STP. They just kind of split the team up and said, we're going to run 2 cars with one money, and it stretched everybody really thin, and I think that kind of hurt Kyle and Richard in the long run. I think if they wouldn't have brought up Kyle, if they would have got his own sponsorship deals before and not stressed the team out, I think Kyle and Richard could have both won a few more races. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks again for watching. Not sure what we got planned for tomorrow. Maybe just do a small rip or something, not sure yet. But we'll have something for you. So thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, and we will see you in the morning.